All right, guys, good evening. Just got home from work and I made a video last night about the new starter and alternator, and also a little bit of research I did on this. The clicking sound, when you turn the key and it's click, 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 click. A lot of people just said to check all your grounds. So I did that. I went through, started from the back here, the battery's in the back, and I redid this frame ground. I took it off and I took the wire brush to it on the drill, cleaned all that up, and I cleaned the wires and I cleaned the bolt and torqued that back down. And again, that's the hole in the frame for the quad shock. And I just got a bolt and bolted that in. And then that goes up to, I've got that running all the way up to the engine block, and then the engine block goes over to this side of the frame. And then, of course, we do have our ground strap. The ground strap is on the back of the bell housing right here, and that's secure. But what I did different on this strap is I've been using this bolt right here as a ground stud. And then, of course, this is a power distribution area. So, this is for the electric fan, electric water pump, all that kind of stuff. The fan controller, that kind of stuff. And then this is the ground for all that. But I also had the ground strap on this on the back side of the apron here. And that wasn't sanded down very well. So I said, and I did some research, and everybody said to move it definitely to the frame. There's not a whole lot of resistance if you ground to the frame. And I have frame connectors welded, so that'll help also. But I sanded this down because I was going to weld a bolt here and just, have a ground lug. But then I thought, with the tire turning, I didn't want to have this anywhere near the tire turning and possibly hitting this. So I considered maybe sanding down the sway bar bracket and putting a bolt through there, which that would work just fine. But I saw the horn was mounted right here on the frame also. So I took that bolt out and again, sanded down the frame to bare metal and cleaned up the bolt and everything and put this on here. So I checked my battery and everything. When I got home from the track, the battery was at 80% and it was over 12 volts. So the battery is not the issue, but I went ahead and did all those grounds and it fired up for me. So we'll test it one more time, and I'll probably go ahead and install these. The main thing I like with this starter is this is good for up to 14 to 1 compression. And so if I ever decide to lock out the timing or go up, this will go pretty high on compression as far as the torque rating. And then the alternator, this is a race alternator. And I think they said the main thing is the alternator, for a race alternator, I think they said the pulley ratios are a little bit different. So, but this puts out, with stock pulleys, 100 amps at idle. And at high RPM, it goes up to about 114 amps. So for the few little electric accessories I have, I think that will be fine. The electric water pump doesn't draw much, and then the fans don't come on that often. So I won't have the fans on running down the track. If anything, I'll turn them on in the staging lanes and then turn them off when I go up to stage. So bottom line is, I did test it with the battery and it started right up. So my wife just pulled up, so she won't be happy if I fire up the car. I was trying to get that before she got home, but to test it, which I already did tested it this morning before I left for work, and it worked. So anyway, that is squared away, and we'll fire the car up just to show you guys that it was just the grounds. And I have the ground to the frame on this side, and I do have a solid wire that runs all the way up to the block. The one thing I did on the block, I checked the ground, and there was some of the paint when I painted the block was still on there, so I did take the wire brush and get that down to bare metal. And then the only other thing I did was I moved the ground from that grounding stud to the frame, and it fired up the first time. So I'm glad we got that issue solved, and I think wherever I read that on to check all your grounds was spot on. Another thing I read that might have helped was I had all these grounds stacked up on this stud up here. You know, this wire, and then all the grounds for the fan and everything else was all stacked on top of each other. And what I read was even stacking all that up will add more resistance. So I separated that battery ground to the frame, and then all the accessories. Those are the only things on that little grounding lug on the apron, and that made all the difference, guys. So it was working before, but obviously some kind of resistance built up or whatever, and it quit working when we were at the track, of course. But nonetheless, it's fixed now. I'll fire it up at a later date to prove it to you, but I have tested it and it's working fine. All right, guys, thank you. Have a good night. I'm not sure when we'll be back at the track. Tonight was a streetcar night, or supposed to be, but obviously it's rained out. So we'll try to get out to another streetcar night, try to get a clean pass without tripping the beams, and see what, should be in the 1060s, I would think, at least, maybe a little more. That's kind of the goal, but main thing is we did get into the 10s. So that was my goal for the year, and we got it. If we don't do any better than that this year, I'll consider it a success. But obviously, you guys saw the time slip. 130 miles an hour is good for a much lower ET than 1098. So that's the next thing, is to put everything together. I got to check this clutch. And again, because what I did differently was bringing it up on the two-step instead of just flooring it right before I dumped the clutch and just let it come up on the two-step real quick. I kind of raised it up. I let it come up slower on the two-step, and as the RPMs came up, the car lurched forward a little bit. So the clutch may still be grabbing a tiny bit. So I may have to put a turn or two in the firewall adjuster. And that's another thing we'll have to test before we go to the track. But other than that, I'm not going to mess with the suspension anymore. I'm going to stick with this air pressure. I'm happy with the way the car went down the track, nice and straight. We'll leave that launch RPM where we're at, 5,200, and we'll try it again. We'll just try not to lurch forward and trip the beams. But anyway, glad to say the starting issue is fixed, guys. So hopefully we'll be back to the track soon and get deeper in the 10s. Okay, thank you. Hope everybody has a good night.